The movies have always been a technological spectacle, a grand illusion that, like a magic act, uses smoke, light, and trickery to make marvelous illusions come to life. Since the early 20th century, the movies have operated as one of the world's chief storytellers. In this lecture, we will learn about the early history of movies and the evolution of the Hollywood studio system. Like every medium we've encountered so far this semester, filmmaking has passed through several stages on its way to mass medium status. Throughout these stages, creative and bold innovators have worked together to continually advance the medium, revealing the strongly collaborative nature of this industry. The concept of film dates back as far as the late 1400s, when famed Italian artist and innovator Leonardo da Vinci theorized a device could be created to reproduce reality. More substantial progress was made in the 1600s, when a magic lantern projected images painted on glass plates using an oil lamp as a light source. In 1824, the thaumatrope consisted of a two-sided card whose different images appeared to combine when the card was twirled. And the zoetrope, created in 1834, was a cylindrical device with slits cut into it that rapidly spun images on the inside, making it appear to viewers as if the images were moving. If you're a horror movie fanatic like me, you might recognize the Crooked Man zoetrope, used in the 2016 film The Conjuring 2. The true development stage of filmmaking began when inventors discovered a process for making a series of photographs appear to move while being projected on a screen. Edward Muybridge, an English photographer living in America, is credited with being the first person to make images move. He studied motion by using multiple cameras to take successive photographs of humans and animals in motion. By 1880, he had developed a method for projecting the photographic images onto a wall for public viewing. In 1884, American entrepreneur George Eastman, whose name you may recognize as founder of the Eastman Kodak Company, developed the first roll film. This was a tremendous improvement over the heavy metal and glass plates previously used to make individual photos. A few years later, Louis-Ami Auguste Leprince, a French artist living in England, invented the first motion picture camera using roll film. Leprince is credited with filming the first motion picture, Roundhay Garden Scene, in 1888. Recorded at 12 frames per second, the film depicts several people strolling on a lawn and runs for just a few seconds. The accompanying image on the slide is a glass copy negative of that first film. Another improvement came when American minister Hannibal Goodwin improved Eastman's roll film by using thin strips of transparent, pliable material called celluloid, which could hold a coating of chemicals sensitive to light. Goodwin's breakthrough enabled a strip of film to move through a camera and be photographed in rapid succession, producing a series of pictures. The early developers of film laid the groundwork for the shift to the entrepreneurial stage. During this stage, inventors created new projection and distribution technologies, enabling people to come together in a public place to view movies. American inventor Thomas Edison has shown up in several chapters this semester, and he's here again. Along with his assistant William Kennedy Dixon, Edison combined his incandescent light bulb, Goodwin's celluloid, and Leprince's camera to create another early movie camera called the kintograph, and a single-person viewing system called the kinescope. This small projection system required individual viewers to look through a small hole to see images moving on a tiny plate. Over in France, brothers Louis and Auguste Lumière developed the cinematograph, a combined camera, film development, and projection system. Their projection system improved on Edison and Dixon's, as it enabled more than one person at a time to see the moving images on a large screen. Not to be outdone, Edison continued his work, patenting several inventions and manufacturing a new large screen system called the vitascope, through which longer film scripts could be projected without interruption. Staged at a music hall in New York in April 1896, Edison's first public showing of the Vitascope featured shots from a boxing match and waves rolling onto a beach. Some members of the audience were so taken with the realism of the images that they stepped back from the screen's crashing waves to avoid getting their feet wet. At this point, movies were recorded in a single continuous camera shot, as early filmmakers had not figured out how to move the camera or edit film shots together. They mainly showed people or objects in motion without conveying a story. Even so, by 1900, short movies had become part of the entertainment industry, used as visual novelties in amusement arcades, traveling carnivals, wax museums, and vaudeville theaters. With the introduction of narrative films in the 1890s, movies were officially a mass medium. Narrative films told a story with dramatic action and conflict from the main characters. Even without sound, film promised a far richer storytelling experience than books. French magician and inventor Georges Méliès opened the first public movie theater in France in 1868. He produced short fantasy and fairy tale films, including a version of Cinderella. Méliès increasingly used editing and unique camera tricks and techniques, such as slow motion and cartoon animation, which would become key ingredients in future narrative filmmaking. Over in the United States, the first filmmaker to adapt Méliès' innovations to narrative film was Edwin S. Porter. He shot narrative scenes out of order, then edited them together to tell a story. In 1902, he made what is regarded as America's first narrative film, The Life of an American Fireman, which introduced the first recorded close-up. Porter also introduced the Western genre and the first chase scene in 1903's The Great Train Robbery. Much like how the newspaper and magazine industries dropped their prices to appeal to a larger audience, 1907 marked the arrival of the Nickelodeon. These small, makeshift theaters showed films for 5 cents to attract a working-class crowd. Because silent films didn't have dialogue, they transcended language barriers and were very popular among newly arrived European immigrants. Between 1907 and 1909, the number of Nickelodeons in the United States skyrocketed from 5,000 to 10,000. The craze peaked in 1910, when entrepreneurs began seeking more affluent spectators, attracting them with larger and more lavish movie theaters. In an attempt to dominate the movie business and reap its profits, Thomas Edison formed the Motion Picture Patents Company, called the Trust, in 1908. It was a cartel of major U.S. and French film producers, which pooled film technology patents, acquired most major film distributorships, and signed an exclusive deal with George Eastman to supply stock film only to Trust-approved theater companies. The idea behind the Trust was to end seemingly ceaseless lawsuits against Edison, who now collectively controlled 16 major film patents through the Trust. But what it meant for everyone else is if you wanted to make a movie, you needed to go through Edison. History.com explains the Trust a lot better in its article, The Renegade Roots of Hollywood Studios. First, producers and exhibitors were required to use Edison's patent equipment to make and show movies. Every theater owner also had to pay $2 a week simply to hold a license to purchase and screen its films. The Edison Trust sued any pirates who screened or made films without its permission. It fixed a standard price of admission, no matter how expensive or cheap a movie's production, which meant studios had little incentive to produce quality films. The Edison Trust also banned film credits for movie stars, because it feared actors gaining celebrity status would demand more money. The Trust acted as a de facto arbiter of what films were seen in the United States by blocking film imports and, believing Americans lacked attention spans for feature films, limited movies to 20 minutes in length. Except not everyone was so keen on Edison's trust. One of the renegades History.com referred to was Hungarian immigrant Adolf Zukor. Unlike Edison, the New York City Nickelodeon owner envisioned a film industry that could generate more revenue by screening feature-length films built around the star power of actors and actresses. In 1912, Zukor paid $18,000 for American distribution rights to a French for-reel silent film featuring popular actress Sarah Bernhardt. But Zukor still needed a license from the Edison Trust to show the picture in his own theater. The Trust thought Bernhardt was too big of a celebrity, and the film's 40-minute runtime was too long for American audiences, so it denied the license. Zukor went rogue and showed the film anyhow. It was a hit. Audiences began flocking to star-studded films produced by upstart independents like Zukor's Famous Players Film Company and William Fox's Fox Film Corporation, now known as Paramount Pictures and 20th Century Fox. The independent companies also left the East Coast center of the film production world, Fort Lee, New Jersey, for a small agricultural community outside Los Angeles called Hollywood. While the town's beautiful year-round weather was certainly a draw for film production, so was its jurisdiction in San Francisco's Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which had proven averse to enforcing patent claims. Zukor and Fox filed antitrust actions against the Edison Trust. A federal district court ruled the trust was indeed a monopoly, and it soon dissolved. By then, Eastman Kodak had already modified its exclusive contract with the trust to sell film stock to unlicensed independents. The number of theaters exhibiting independent films grew by a third within 12 months to half of the theater industry. By the 1910s, movies had become a major industry. Even beyond Edison's trust, entrepreneurs wanted to control as much of it as possible and aimed to dominate the three major areas, or pillars, of the movie business. The first is the production side, which is making the actual movie. Next is distribution, which involves getting the movie shown in theaters. The third pillar is exhibition, or playing the film in theaters. Controlling all three major parts of the industry supply chain is called vertical integration, where one company can start with the idea for a script and take it through the entire movie-making process, up to and including screening it for an audience. This concentration of power gave rise to the studio system, an early film production system that constituted a sort of assembly line process for movie making. Major film studios controlled not only actors, but also directors, editors, writers, and other employees, all of whom worked under exclusive contracts. Just 5 vertically integrated movie studios, sometimes called the Big Five, made up this new film oligopoly. You'll easily recognize the first 4 names: Paramount, 20th Century Fox, MGM, Warner Brothers, and RKO. Folks like Zukor, who fought Edison's monopoly, realized they could control the film industry themselves through vertical integration. So let's take a closer look at these 3 pillars of the filmmaking business. The first sequence is production. Once companies learned audiences preferred specific actors, they signed exclusive contracts with big-name stars. In this way, the studio system began controlling the talent of the industry. Rather than shop around for better pay per picture, a star could only make movies with their contracted company. And it wasn't just actors. Directors, editors, writers, and others were all under exclusive contracts with movie studios. The studio system proved so efficient that major studios were soon producing new feature films every week. Pooling talent, rather than patents, turned out to be a more ingenious tactic for movie studios seeking to dominate film production. The next step is film distribution. One early effort to control distribution came in 1904, when movie companies provided vaudeville theaters with films and projectors on a film exchange system. In return for their short films, shown between live acts in the theaters, movie producers received a small percentage of the vaudeville ticket gate receipts. When Edison's trust withheld projection equipment from theater companies not willing to pay the trust's patent use fees, independent film companies looked for distribution strategies outside the trust. Adolf Zukor again led the fight, this time through the development of block booking. Under this system, movie exhibitors who wanted to access the popular films with big stars like Mary Pickford had to also rent new or marginal films featuring no stars. Although this practice was eventually outlawed as monopolistic, such contracts enabled the studios to test market up-and-coming stars at little financial risk. One last distribution strategy came from marketing American films abroad. The First World War disrupted film production in Europe, and America stepped in to fill the gap and became a leader in the commercial movie business worldwide. The final pillar is film exhibition. After the trust collapsed, emerging studios in Hollywood found a new idea for controlling exhibition and making certain that the movies they produced were shown. When industrious theater owners began forming film cooperatives to compete with block booking tactics, producers decided to buy the theaters. Major studios concentrated their purchase on first-run theaters that premiered new films in major downtown areas and generated between 85 and 95% of all film revenue. To attract middle and upper middle class moviegoers, the studios built movie palaces, full-time, single-screen theaters to provide a more enjoyable and comfortable movie viewing environment.